What's up, everybody? Welcome back to this episode of Vendetta Sports Media's NBA Previews. I'm Jerry Walker. Alongside me is Jake Reno. And Jake, we have one of the interesting teams in the NBA from last season, the Dallas Mavericks, on the slate for today. Obviously, go out, make the trade for Kyrie Irving last season, and it really didn't end up working out after that trade deadline. Said earlier, following the February deadline, the Mavericks went 11 and 19 the rest of the way, ultimately finishing 38 and 44, just missing out on that last play-in spot. 2 games back of the Thunder, finished third in their division. It was a disappointment last year, to say the least, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think we could start with this. I think you might agree with me here. I was lost on that Kyrie trade. Really just I remember seeing it last year and I just didn't understand it. And for them to go 11 and 19 after the trade with no guarantee of him coming back, right? He was available for a new deal. He explored the idea of going somewhere else, ended up re-signing 3 years, 126 million. So he's getting paid. But I didn't understand that move from Mark Cuban and the Mavericks to go out and get this guy. They played terrible once they acquired him, and no guarantee of getting him back. They gave up, like you said, Spencer Dinwiddie, a couple picks, as well as Dorian Finney-Smith, right?
Yep.
So you've got Luka, who's averaging 32 a night. He needs the ball in his hands. And then a guy like Kyrie, who needs the ball in his hands. Really just mind-boggling trade. It just, not a lot of it made sense, especially for a team that more so needs big men help to complement Luka Doncic. So we'll see how it plays out this year with Kyrie and Luka. It didn't seem to mesh that well last season. Hopefully for them, it'll work out better. But to this day, I don't really get that at all.
Yeah, that's something I'll get into a little bit later. But the trade was kind of interesting. You traded a lot away for Kyrie Irving, and it clearly didn't work out all that well last season. As I was saying, missed out on the play-in. They were at one point, I want to say, a 5 or a 6 seed in the West, looking comfortable, and then it just went, all hell fell apart. And so what happens at times, you kind of you see this deal of, oh, we can go out and get Kyrie Irving. Kyrie's such a big name. He's won a ring, multiple All-Star. Maybe it wasn't the right fit, but I'll get into that more because they made some other moves this offseason. Start with especially around the draft. Draft day, made 2 trades. Get Derek Lively II, who Oklahoma City drafted. He's a 7-foot center from Duke. That helps. That's like you're saying, big hole was their big men game. And I think this is a guy that really could help them out there.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that was a big part of my confusion with the Kyrie trade is it's, clearly things aren't working out. And one of the best big men of all time has played for this organization and won them that ring, Dirk Nowitzki, right? So you would think that this team would be familiar with that. And so for them to go out and get that guard over a big man, obviously they drafted him. I believe he went 12th overall in the draft. Good move over there. Duke produces a lot of talent. Obviously, I mean, he's a very talented player in high school, did very well in college. And, that was reflected in the draft. Him being top 15 pick, but I think there's still a little bit more they got to fill in. It's a much more guard heavy team. Obviously, they've got the 2 big names in Kyrie and Luka Doncic, but you also have Seth Curry on the roster, Tim Hardaway Jr., Jaden Hardy, even Dante Exum, which me and you were laughing about a little bit. Name I haven't heard in a while. But they've got some bigger guys on their roster that can help defensively a bit, but not really any scoring threats whatsoever. So,
yeah,
interesting team to say the least.
Yeah, and I think that was a big focus this offseason because obviously going out trading for Derek Lively II, center, traded for another rookie from the Sacramento Kings who was drafted, Oliver Maxime Prosper, plays small forward, power forward, a little on the smaller side for power forward, but can add some depth there because Josh Green is currently the starting small forward. And then really, I think this was their big move outside of re-signing Kyrie this offseason. Went out and got Grant Williams from Boston, and I think that's a great move. I really like Grant Williams' game. He's a solid post player, solid big man that kind of fills in a massive hole that they had. And I'm excited to see. And they really, I don't think they gave up all that much. I know they got 2 second-round picks as well. There's that 3-team deal with the Spurs. They sent off Reggie Bullock to the Spurs. It's one of those interesting ones to see how it works out because this is a hole that was needed to be filled, and I think Grant Williams can fill that role.
Hmm. Yeah, Grant Williams, like I'm not too big of a fan of him, but I do agree with you on the actual playing aspect of it. Yeah, definitely somebody you needed. He's kind of like a workhorse, an engine almost, like just one of those guys that he's going to be tough, he's going to be resilient, and you know that when he's out there, he's going to give you everything he's got. And that's definitely something on the bigger end. I believe he's 6'6", 6'7". Definitely something that this team needed. This is Luka's team, but he needs that help around him, and it looks like they're building that way to it. So, I think that they'll be better off this season than they were last year after the offseason that they had.
Yeah, and I think the role that Grant Williams is going to play is going to be bigger than his one in Boston. He was more of a bench guy, only started 23 of the 79 games he played last season, 8.1 points, 4.6 rebounds. So there's that aspect of I think his numbers will bump up this year. And it helps when you now have two extremely talented ball handlers that'll both draw double teams. And I know Luka can pass the rock really well. Kyrie used to be able to pass the ball really well. I'm sure he still can. But it's going to be interesting to see for me how Grant Williams is kind of role changes now that he's the veteran big man alongside Lively, who's, I want to say, 20 years old, 19 years old?
Yeah, 19, 20 years old.
So it's going to be interesting, but I got another question for you. X Factor. What's going to be the make or break for this team? I know I have mine, but I want to hear yours.
Well, I mean, I honestly, I think there could be a couple. I think one of the X factors could be that we need to see Kyrie and Luka complement each other more, right? These two need to play better together. They need to mesh better because there were at some points last season in some of these games, they lose a couple close games down the stretch. They're trying to get that last play-in spot. They just look frustrated, and a little confused, like why is this not working? It's Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. These two dudes averaging like 27 and 32 points, each per night. I mean, these are elite level scoring options, right? I mean, number one options on any team. So when they're together, everyone's like, okay, well, they're going to score a bunch of points. But I think that is one of the X factors, would be having those two help each other more instead of like almost hurt each other. And then development of big men. You want to see Derek Lively get some solid minutes out there, learn from some of the veterans on the team, and develop into somebody that can be a really good or solid 7'1" center. So that'd be it for me.
Yeah, I mean, one of mine was going to be that are we going to see Kyrie and Luka gel together? Because last season, pretty much once Kyrie was traded over, it was either him or Luka leading the scoring every single night. They'd pass the ball, but it seemed like it was just the two of them. There wasn't any of that secondary help, which leads me to my other point of who is going to step up? Is it going to be a Josh Green type guy? Is Robert Williams going to kind of step up and get more points, help out on that offensive end to an extent? Or Grant Williams, not Robert Williams. But is it going to be someone – that's my question. Who's going to step up next? Because as good as Kyrie and Luka are, and I'm sure they've worked some stuff out, because that was my whole question when the trade initially happened was, all right, you got two guys who both need the rock in their hand. Who's going to have it? Who's going to take the last shot sort of thing? And it didn't seem like even they knew. Both of them had to have the ball. Luka finished averaging about 9 assists, Kyrie 6 assists, so they were still passing it. But it seemed like there was almost a point where I'm pretty sure I remember seeing you like, maybe you need to put one of them on the bench, and sure as hell isn't going to be Luka. But at the same time, Kyrie's getting paid how much for 1 year?
Over like 42 million.
A lot, yeah. But it was one of those things that you can't feasibly bench one of them. Yet at the same time, I think that would have helped significantly. Now you have a second string unit that's being led by a great point guard as well, who can
Hmm.
score, take over. And on the flip side, Kyrie, say it was him who got benched, or even Luka, they're now going against teams' second options, which just spreads the floor out, makes it a lot more difficult for teams to guard the Mavericks. Whereas now they're playing together. It was that balance, which I think was their flaw at the end of last season, was they couldn't get that figured out. But I do believe that they will. I think if they are going to, they have the perfect head coach for that in Jason Kidd. He was a point guard, one of the best of his generation, and knows how to pass the rock, knows how to get his triple doubles, but can also be that veteran mindset for these two guys who kind of have a lot left to show. And this is going to be a big, big year for the Mavericks.
Right. And I really like the point that you made of obviously you got two stars in the league, big names, and they would probably be offended by getting benched. One of the two of them, they wouldn't like that. But when you actually look at it, it would be cool to see almost two starting rosters in a sense. I mean, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but try to stick with me here. You
Yeah.
know, start Luka or start Kyrie, and then, like you said, have another one come out and lead the charge with a different unit, right? And try to see what players on the team complement Luka better or Kyrie better, right? What team fills in these gaps, and if you could have these guys coming out there being the number one option when they have their unit on, then they go off and rest. Number one option comes back out because, like I said, these are elite number one options on pretty much every team in the league when it comes to scoring. So to have two of them on the floor at the same time, there's only one ball on the court, and some guys are going to get frustrated. They're not going to get the touches that they usually want or think that they deserve, and it can cause a lot of trouble. And I think that's what we saw last season with that just total fall off. They didn't even win 40 games last year, so that's something that they really got to figure out. And like you said, Jason Kidd, great point guard, smart guy. I think they'll be able to. Him and Mark Cuban, they'll be able to figure something out this year. They'll crack 40 wins.
Absolutely. I just want to make, before we hop into our predictions, I do have one more point I want to make on this roster, because you've been preaching they needed a big man, and
Mm-hmm.
they had one for a bit of last season, Christian Wood.
They did,
I
yeah.
liked Christian Wood in the Rockets, came to Dallas, still averaged 16 and a half, 7 boards. So that looked like the guy. And then kind of just let him walk in free agency. Signs with the Lakers. I wonder what the money was. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's a guy like that would have helped significantly, because then you have Christian Wood maybe starting or coming off the bench, or the Lively and Grant Williams, and that suddenly you have 3 strong big men to go with the 3 or 4 guards that they have. Whole thing would have kind of gelled perfectly on paper, at least. On court, as we saw last year, could be a little
Mm-hmm.
different, but it's one of those things that it's going to be interesting to see. But into predictions, what are you thinking for the Mavs this year? Do they get back to the playoff? Because, in my opinion, they have to this year. If they
Yes, yeah.
if they're out of it by the deadline, we could see them ship off Kyrie or
Mm-hmm.
Luka. I just think Luka's
And
there, that they won't let him go.
I just real quick, I think that they will kind of try to ride that out a little bit. We've talked about this before, but executives and owners hate looking foolish, and they almost did look very foolish in the offseason, with Kyrie having exploring his options, and then they signed him to this huge deal. I mean, 42 million a year is a lot of money, right? And that is part of the reason why they probably couldn't re-sign Christian Wood, because they might not have been able to afford what he was asking for. And you know, they picked their side. They chose Kyrie over him, and if he would have walked in free agency, I mean, you rented the dude for 30 games to miss the playoffs entirely. It's just terrible, right? But I think, I said I think they'll crack 40. I don't think by that much though. I think this is going to be one of those teams that might be in the play-in. I think we could see them like 43 and 39, 42 and 40 type of team. So like right in that play-in mix, close to that 6 seed. So I like them at around a 7 or 8 seed this year.
I honestly agree with you there. I like that. Big part of kind of where I think depends on other teams in that division. The Spurs are going to be a little better. Don't think they're necessarily going to be a playoff team by any means. Still early. Pelicans in that Southwest division as well. If they're healthy, it makes things a hell of a lot harder for the Mavs. But I think that's the thing. I don't think the Pelicans will be as strong this upcoming season. And check out the preview Matt Hannafin and I did on the New Orleans Pelicans for more details on that. But I think that could help Dallas. If Dallas gets off to a little better start, if everyone's clicking with each other, which I do think it can happen, I could see them winning around like 44, maybe ceiling would be 45 games. I like where your shot was, 42, 43 range, somewhere in there. I do agree. I think they'll be right on that cusp this year of that 6, an automatic playoff berth, or that 7 and have to do the play-in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it really comes down to how well Kyrie and Luka can play together and share the court.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're able. I really do. I mean, that is crazy offensive firepower. I think that they're able to do it, but it's up to the coaching as well. To really figure out how to get these guys to play their best together. But obviously, also on these players, you might have to take a little ego check and say, okay, I might not get the usual touches that I do, but we want to win games. We want to make the postseason. We want to succeed beyond the regular season, and it's going to take some selflessness to be able to do that for this team.
Absolutely. Well, Jake, unless there's anything else you want to do, you have any final points on what could be a very, very interesting and exciting team this season?
I think that this is still Luka's squad at the end of the day. I think it always will be. He's for sure the face of this team, and hopefully Kyrie Irving can learn to understand that, despite being paid $42 million a year. But yeah, I think they could be a crazy duo, a crazy guard duo, or they could kind of repeat the latter half of last season again.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with you on that. It's going to be very much one way or another kind of thing. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I am looking very forward to it. Do have confidence that the Mavs will get it done. It's a well-run organization with Cuban. Jason Kidd's a good coach. There's some other good coaches on that staff. I'm excited. 2 days away, season is coming. Mavericks get it started, I believe, on Wednesday. But Jake, thank you. It's always a pleasure talking some hoops up with you. Thank you guys, the viewers, for watching this. Make sure you check out our other 29 teams NBA previews on the Vendetta Sports Media YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to that so you don't miss any of our NBA coverage throughout the year. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.